Now you'll learn how to create an Azure App Service web app using the Azure portal. The first step in hosting your web application is to create a web app, an app service app, inside your Azure subscription. There are several ways you can create a web app. You can use the Azure portal, the Azure Command Line Interface or CLI, a script, or an integrated development environment or IDE. Now we'll look at how to use the Azure portal to create a web app. For this lesson, we will demonstrate using the Azure portal because it's a graphical experience, which makes it a great learning tool. The portal helps you discover available features, add additional resources, and customize existing resources. Azure App Service is a fully managed web application hosting platform. The Platform as a Service, PaaS, offered by Azure allows you to focus on designing and building your app while Azure takes care of the infrastructure to run and scale your applications. Using the Azure portal, you can easily add deployment slots to an app service web app. For instance, you can create a staging deployment slot where you can push your code to test on Azure. Once you are happy with your code, you can easily swap the staging deployment slot with the production slot. You do all this with a few simple mouse clicks in the Azure portal. The Azure portal provides out-of-the-box continuous integration and deployment with Azure DevOps, GitHub, Bitbucket, a local Git repository, or FTP on your development machine. Connect your web app with any of the above sources, and App Services will do the rest for you by automatically syncing your code and any future changes on the code into the web app. Furthermore, with Azure DevOps, you can define your own build and release process that compiles your source code, runs the tests, builds a release, and finally deploys the release into your web app every time you commit the code. All that happens implicitly without any need to intervene. In addition to being able to set up continuous integration or deployment for your web app, you can always benefit from the tight integration with Visual Studio to publish your web app to Azure via web deploy technology. App Service also supports FTP-based publishing for more traditional workflows. Baked into the web app is the ability to scale up or down or scale out. Depending on the usage of the web app, you can scale your app up or down by increasing or decreasing the resources of the underlying machine that is hosting your web app. Resources can be the number of cores or the amount of RAM available. Scaling out, on the other hand, is the ability to increase the number of machine instances that are running your web app. When you're ready to run a web app on Azure, you visit the Azure portal and create a web app resource. Creating a web app allocates a set of hosting resources in App Service, which you can use to host any web-based application that is supported by Azure, whether it be the ASP.NET Core, Node.js, Java, Python, etc. The Azure portal provides a wizard to create a web app. This wizard requires the following fields: a valid and active Azure subscription, a valid resource group, the name of the web app. This name becomes part of the app's URL, so it must be unique among all Azure App Service web apps. And publish. You can deploy your application to App Service as code or as a ready-to-run Docker image. Selecting Docker image will activate the Docker tab of the wizard, where you provide information about the Docker registry from which App Service will retrieve your image. You will also need the runtime stack field. If you choose to deploy your application as code, App Service needs to know what runtime your application uses. Examples include Node.js, Python, Java, and .NET. If you deploy your application as a Docker image, you will not need to choose a runtime stack, since your image will include it. Operating system, App Service, can host applications on Windows or Linux servers. Region is the Azure region from which your application will be served. Finally, your App Service plan. If you are deploying your app as code, many of the available runtime stacks are limited to one operating system or the other. After choosing a runtime stack, the toggle will indicate whether or not you have a choice of operating system. If your target runtime stack is available on both operating systems, select the one that you use to develop and test your application. If your application is packaged as a Docker image, choose the operating system on which your image is designed to run. Selecting Windows activates the Monitoring tab, where you have the option to enable application insights. Enabling this feature will configure your app to automatically send detailed performance telemetry to the Application Insights Monitoring Service without requiring any changes to your code. Application Insights can be used from Linux-hosted apps as well, but this turnkey no-code option is only available on Windows. An app service plan is a set of virtual server resources that run app service apps. A plan's size, sometimes referred to as its SKU or pricing tier, determines the performance characteristics of the virtual servers that run the apps assigned to the plan and the app service features that those apps have access to. Every app service web app you create must be assigned to a single app service plan that runs it. A single app service plan can host multiple app service web apps. In most cases, the number of apps you can run on a single plan will be limited by the performance characteristics of the apps and the resource limitations of the plan. App service plans are the unit of billing for app service. The size of each app service plan in your subscription, in addition to the bandwidth resources used by the apps deployed to those plans, determines the price that you pay. The number of web apps deployed to your app service plans has no effect on your bill. You can use any of the available Azure management tools to create an app service plan. When you create a web app via the Azure portal, the wizard will help you to create a new plan at the same time if you don't already have one.